Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us here on The Father Show. And I'm your host, Mike Thompson. And before I go any further, I want you to remember to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, click that button, and hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever we drop a new show. All right? So today, we've got a returning guest, a guest that's been on the show, and we talked about him being a single father. But today we're going to be talking about raising interracial kids. And that's a subject that's close to my heart because my kids are interracial, but also I see it in the world today. We have a lot of interracial kids, and I know they have a lot of struggles that they go through with. And just like maybe a little bit more than your average kid because of the different racial identity and how the, kids ridicule and find something, just something to tease you about. So we want to talk about that. And I have Roy Alabado, and he's going to be my guest today. And I want you to welcome here on the show. Hey, Roy, how you doing?
Hey, Mike Thompson, how are you? It's a
I'm
pleasure to
fine,
be
man.
back on your show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you back on the show as well. And that background you got, man, looks nice because today we're not getting anything but a bunch of rain. So I love the sunshine that you're getting. A little jealous today, but that's all right. We'll get back there.
Well, I'm not in Miami, but I am in New Jersey, and it's really nice. You know, the
Yeah,
weather's been nice.
yeah. That's one place I haven't been yet, and I'm looking forward to going. My wife really wants us to go to New Jersey. When we was in New York, we didn't
Sure.
get a chance to do that, so we're going back just so we can go to New Jersey. As
Okay.
one of the reasons. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about raising interracial kids, and the one of the questions that came to my mind is why was this important for you to talk about?
Well, Mike, our first thing, our kids are growing up very differently because they're going to two separate parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I there's a term called racial group and ethnic group.
Mm-hmm.
Racial group deals with the physical characteristics, how someone looks. You know, um, with Asians, do they have slantier eyes?
Mm-hmm.
Is their color of their skin a little bit more yellowish, right, or
Right.
darker? That's just an example. And so when you have biracial kids, there's a dominance towards something. There's always a dominance towards something. If you're familiar with the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, we always have a preference for something,
Mm-hmm.
always. And so when you're with biracial kids or, two different parents from different, um, groups, there's a racial group. So that's the physical. And then there's ethnic groups, which is the customs and the
Okay.
beliefs. So now you're dealing with a very complex issue. So now you have children, and I think biracial kids are really pretty, very handsome,
Yeah.
and I do like it. And so there's a preference, there's a dominance towards a look. So you have two parents that look totally two different ways, and their kids um, look towards a dominance towards the other parent, right? Have have
Mm-hmm.
have a preference genetically. And then there's customs. What kids are taught about their custom. So as an example is, let's say a guy by the name of Ronan McGregor, an
Mm-hmm.
Irish kid, Irish dad, and then a German mom. And so this kid goes up growing, Irish traditions, hangs out with Irish families and eats Irish, foods. Well, where's the German, right? And so
Right.
there's always a slight dominance. It could be 51-49, or it could be really there's definitely a gap or of differences between, parents because of uh, how they're how it's dominance towards growing up.
Yeah.
And
Now,
so
would you
that's
say,
why.
but would you say that a lot of time too is who, as a, I don't know, a dominant parent or a dominant side of the family that is involved in the kid's life?
Sure. So time is one element. How much time that child spends with that parent.
Hmm.
And so, when that child, because of, the divorce decree, or, just the accommodations of the child spending time with that parent the most tends to be a little bit more of the preference or the dominance,
Hmm.
right? And it's just slight. It could be slight, or it could, it could be a huge gap if the, if the child only sees the other parent like once a month, right, for a weekend.
Hmm.
And so that's why it's a complex issue. And, I believe that when children grow up, they should know both, right?
Yeah.
And,
Right.
they see grandparents that look totally different, that have different cultural, traditions and values and different foods, right? And then they go to another parent and they look totally different, right? Grandparents and cousins, and they have different customs as well. And so the child sometimes can get confused.
Hmm.
They can be.
Hmm.
And so that's time they need to be explained of who they are, growing up, and saying, like my son is, has Filipino and Spanish and Czechoslovakian and French and English,
Hmm.
and he is descended of someone on the Mayflower,
Hmm.
and so we tell him all these things, and he understands it. He understands it, but he's growing with it
Right.
as he's growing up.
Yeah, because
And
wouldn't you say people that are raising interracial kids need to raise their kids with an open mind so that they
sure,
can accept all the different ethnicities that they might have within their family?
it's true, and part of the 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 challenge is that other parent willing to do that. There's
Right.
so
Yeah.
many other issues, with growing with raising, you know, a child with two different parents, and there's arguments about money, there's arguments about time. Usually it's time and money, and then culture
Hmm.
is is falls behind, with those different priorities. And so it's hard. Sometimes the other parent might be open, and sometimes the other parent might not be open, you
Yeah.
know.
Because I have in my family alone, we are just a rainbow. We have something of
Sure,
everything in our family,
sure,
and I love it. But I've also have friends that have married interracially, and it was one friend that came to mind when we were talking about doing this show. He and his wife, he's black, she's white, and the
sure.
father never accepted him. They always kept him away. So even when they went to visit them, the family, he stayed at the hotel. The wife would stay at the house. And then when they had a child together, it was kind of crazy. Now he didn't like the dad, but he loved his grandchild. And as far as I know, and I could totally be wrong, but as far as I know, that's still the dynamic today. And they've been married. I think their daughter is now she's in high school.
Hmm.
And so that's been going on for 15, 16, 17 years, you know? So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and the child can feel that. The child can feel like, well, my dad doesn't want to be with that family, or my dad's not being accepted by the other family.
Yeah.
And it causes tensions and conflict. Conflict, the basic element of conflict is two belief systems. And so one person believes in that and refuses or doesn't accept, and the other person is also not accepting of what's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
so it creates conflict. And so sometimes I believe it's not about the parents, it's about the child. And so
Yeah.
we as single parents, we try to accommodate the child, even though we have to put our ego aside and, the conflict aside.
Yeah, well, I agree. When now, anytime you are a single parent, you really do need to put the anger that you have for your former spouse, what is anger, what is disagreement, whatever dislike, whatever it is, away. And for the kids' sake, you have to think positive and talk positive of the not just the other parent, but also, be careful of what you say about the other parent's race.
Yeah. Yes. Children are so cognizant about that. And they can understand tension between mom and dad,
Oh yeah,
even though you don't have to say a word.
yeah,
It's a tension in the air. It's you know it's this conflict that they can see and feel in some way through nonverbal communication
yeah.
and through just the element. I got a chance to meet uh, at St. Joe's. It escapes me now, but Doctor. I can't remember, but he talks about prejudice,
Mm-hmm.
and and he says that prejudice and is basically invisible, and you could feel it in the air. There's a whole lot of something going on, but you can't see it. And so oh, his name escapes me. I don't know why. He was on he is like iconic when it comes to racial injustice, and especially
Mm-hmm.
with all what's going on. He was on the movie The Matrix. I don't know why I can't remember, but he says that prejudice is invisible, and you can't you could just feel it sometimes.
Yeah,
And so that's what it is.
yeah.
That's what
Because
it is, and a lot of kids can feel it between
well,
the
yeah,
tensions between parents.
yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
I think we talked about it before on the last show how even when a child is a baby and the parents get into a disagreement, a baby will
sure,
start crying. Just
sure,
from the energy in the room, they can feel it. They absorb in it, and that's
that's
why they tell even pregnant moms to watch the negativity that they are exposed to, because that kid is being exposed to the same thing even though it hasn't even been born yet. So
that's right.
yeah,
That's right.
so
We talk to our children. We talk to our children when they're even in the womb. I used to play
yeah,
music, um, when he was still, inside his mom's belly, and he loves music.
yeah,
And you see the consequence of that. There's an after effect. We used to play so much music, and he loves to dance, and he loves the music. There was actually a particular song that made him calm down because we used to play it all the time.
mm-hmm,
And so, it affects our kids different ways, and it definitely affects our kids when there is tension between both parents. And
yeah,
with biracial kids, they're a little bit more, especially, so kids with two separate families, they're a little bit more observant, I think, because they see two different cultures, they see different ways how
mm-hmm,
families happen. With two different families, they're like two different countries happening at the same time.
yeah,
And so they go to this different country one day, and eating rituals are different, or whether they practice religion, et cetera, et cetera. And then they go to this other family, and then it's done differently.
yeah,
So they see two different perspectives in how people handle business, handle religion, sleeping patterns. My son tends to sleep later at my house than at his mom's house, and he knows that. So he milks it. He milks it. He's in bed by like 8:30 at his mom's house, and he's in bed by 9, sometimes 9:30 at my house. But he knows that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and parents have to realize too that when you are raising not just interracial kids, but kids, period, that you have to expose them to different things. And but when you're raising interracial kids, it's really important to sit down and talk with them and let them and really have a great open dialogue about what they feel, what they may experience, and because as they grow, different segments of their life, they're going to experience different things, and they're going to have some challenges that they're going to have to deal with. So you got to have that line of communication open so that you can talk with your child and let them know, what's going on, what to expect, how to handle it for that matter.
Yeah, and it starts at a young age. And
Yeah.
so my son has very good communication with his mom, and he has good communication with me. And so I, tend to, want to know everything about what's going on in his brain.
Hmm.
And they tell you little things. They tell you stories about school. They tell you different stories about their friends. They tell you different stories about like their sports and their educational status and
Hmm.
what's happening, the dynamics at school. And we know that there's inequities. So um people are treated differently.
Hmm.
People are treated differently. We know that.
Yeah.
And so with biracial kids, there are sometimes, they might not be treated differently, or they might be treated, you know,
Well,
um,
I
poorly, right?
yeah, yeah, and I agree because I have my kids are interracial,
Sure.
and both of my boys, I've had to sit them down and discuss this, the police brutality that has been
Yeah,
going on here,
that's right.
for years, but just been more focused on here lately. But I remember when and they're both 24 right now, but I remember when they were about, say, 8, 9 years old, that I told them, I said, now, one, you can tell he's black. You just see him, even though he's very light skinned, he has brown hair, but he's black. The other one, he looks Italian.
Mm,
He looks white. He look Italian. He looks different. And one of the things I told him, I said, now see, when you guys get pulled over, they're gonna look at him and they're gonna say right off the bat, he's black. The other one they're gonna say, well, I'm not quite sure where he is. I'm not quite sure how I want to treat him. But there's going to be a difference. And
there
I've
are.
watched them both grow up, and they now the one son, the brown hair one, yeah, he picked more. He's really kind of divided right in the middle. He has more white friends,
Hmm.
but he knows the black culture because I was a single dad, like I told you before. So he was
Sure.
raised with me. So he knows that side. But my other son, you know, he tends to, I think, go more to the white side, just a tad bit.
Sure.
So, like you said, it might be 41% and 59%, might be 51 and 49. It could
That's
be
right.
multitude of things, but they will. I don't know. I hate to say have to because they really shouldn't have to. They should be able
Sure.
to accept whatever side, whether it's Asian and black and Asian and white and whatever the case may be, the different cultures that they have. Uh, but I think it's just who they're around the most.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's mostly sometimes based on racial group, and we talked about that based on physical differences,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's a sociological term called the one drop rule.
Right.
So if you have you know, a descendant of black ancestry, you're still considered black.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there's a slight, we talked about slight dominance or slight preference. We talk about President Obama, and he is our first black president,
Mm-hmm.
but his mom was white,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Right.
that's just an example of that, and he's both, he's both, but
Well,
but
yeah.
we noted him as our first black president. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's just an example of how things are with our society because of that. And your son are probably really, really handsome, and and
I
and
think
they're
so.
treated differently based
Yeah.
on physical um physical looks,
Yeah.
you know? And you said one's a little lighter and one's a little darker. And so yeah, with now with Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter,
Mm-hmm.
there's a conflict there. I truly believe that there are bad police, right? And there are good police.
Mm-hmm.
There are bad poor people, and there are good poor people. And there are bad rich people, and there are bad,
Yeah.
good rich people.
Yeah.
And so with the Black Lives Matter, I think police need to be like more like social workers rather than, the sergeant of arms and the authoritarian.
Yeah.
Now they have to diagnose, they have to look at things a little bit more like a social worker where they have to,
But
you
they don't
know,
have that kind of training. So
no, they don't.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's hard for them to do that, to be a
sure.
therapist. I read in Denver, and I wish I had thought about it earlier, but Denver was taking that component out of the police response. They were giving that to social workers to respond to mental
Sure.
health type incidents and have the police to back them up, but
Sure.
they're not the first to go, through the door. And I think that's great because it's not something they are capable and trained to handle. They have a little training, but
Yeah,
not the extent that they really need. It's kind
sure.
of like when they were at first responding to domestic violence call. It used to be one cop, and then they realized, well, that's not going to work because you get in there and you arrest, say, the husband, just for conversation point, and the wife start beating on the cop because you're arresting her husband. Well, you call
Sure.
and said, I need the police. So they stop. Now is at least two police officers are going to respond to that call. And
Sure.
and that makes more sense. I know it may cost more, but in the long run, I think it probably have saved lives because the officer's not going to shoot somebody or have to tase somebody just to make sure he or she gets out of there alive.
Yeah, there's just, I mean, especially with the news going on, with all these stories, and the Floyd, verdict, and I'm glad that the verdict was the correct one,
Mm-hmm.
so that there's no conflict in, you know, with the world, and we talk about equity and being treated fairly. If we can just be kind to people and we can treat each other fairly, there would be less conflict in the world.
Yeah.
Because
Well, it's
some groups think they're better than others, and
mhm.
they impose their will and impose their culture, and it's not
Yeah.
right.
I was looking at different things when I was preparing for the show, and one of the things that I really took out of all the things that I've looked at and read was love. You know, we need to love one another,
Sure.
not because we have the same skin tone or the same hair type, just that
Sure.
we are love different individuals, and love can conquer all this. And it's going because the hate is what you see when you
Yeah.
see prejudice and people, you know, I really hate that I'm seeing people that are attacking Asians just because we had somebody tell them that the Asian is the reason why we have COVID-19. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, you perpetuate so much anger in our society to keep it brewing, keep it going, keep people apart. When if we would just focus on loving one another as human
Sure.
beings,
Sure.
that
I
will,
agree.
and we're going to have our differences. That's okay. You know, you love your wife or your former wife, or and you love your child for that matter, but you don't always agree with your child, right? So,
That's right.
so you're
We see,
no,
yeah,
go ahead.
we see a lot of different things. Sometimes, Mike, you'll see some things in your child's behavior, and you're like, "That's your mom. Why are you acting like your mom?" You ever notice that?
Oh yeah,
And then vice
yeah,
versa. That's like you're acting like your dad. You know,
yeah,
why are you being so stubborn right now?
yeah.
You know,
Well,
and so
they learn from you, so they're going to pick up some of your traits. Period.
they do, and they do like different innuendos things that remind you of their mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked about that, and you know you bring up one thing is love. Love is definitely the common core, and I also believe music
Mm-hmm.
and food are also that bring people together.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know I don't know, especially with what's going on in the world right now with the news, and you know it's at bipolar ends where you know one says this and one says this, and you know is this the big lie, right? Or you know what's really truthful, what's going on, and it divides the country. And if we can just get a congruent message, you know, even mask, we still have a
Yeah.
hard time with that. I
Yeah.
know the country's opening up, but like you know what, you know people have a hard time like wearing masks when we had a mandate to wear masks,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so it's just it's really ridiculous. It's like a common message to do it, and you still have people, you know, disagree, and you know, they have, you know, entitlement, and they don't believe in this and different beliefs, and so it's a lot different.
Yeah.
It's very hard
Well,
to give a congruent message, and love is
yeah.
such an easy message to
And
give
but
out.
as human beings, we tend to gravitate to negativity faster than we do to the positive. And when you have that negativity drilled into your brain for so long, be- uh, it's hard to get it out, you know. And but I agree with you. I mean, if we could have more love, if we can have more people with open minds and learn about different cultures, learn about different ethnicities, and enjoy learning about that. You know, like my wife is Hispanic from Mexico City. I love her
Sure.
family. I adore, you know, I enjoy going to their place and having their food,
Yeah.
and you know, because I had to learn. You know, when I first got with my wife, I thought Mexican food was this, you know, and what we call it now is uh, American Mex or something.
Oh, you're getting authentic stuff.
Yeah, but now I get authentic Mexican
That's right.
food, and it's all together different. And
Yes.
but I enjoy it, and I try a lot of different things that I had
Sure.
never eaten before, and come
Sure.
to find out, I like it. I like being around them, and with my kids, I want them to understand it. It's funny, but like I said, my wife is Hispanic, and now when we got married, she has three Hispanic kids, and then I have
Uh,
my three kids who are mixed, and it was funny to watch people reaction when we walk into a restaurant or a grocery store and I have my Hispanic daughter with me and my mixed son and my Spanish wife, and they're looking like, wait a minute,
which
who?
one?
Yeah, and it's funny to watch it. And even since we come to New Orleans, there's not a lot of interracial couples that
Oh,
I've seen. I know there's some here, but it's funny to watch people expression when they see me and my wife walking down the street holding hands, or walking to a store holding hands, or restaurant. It just it's funny to me because I see the expression on their face,
yeah,
and it's funny and ignorant at the same time. But it's I really just wish people would learn to accept other people. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this show is because, we talk about fathers, and we're, messages to fathers. And I don't care what race you may be, I'm hoping that these fathers will teach their kids to love everybody.
sure.
And grant you, it's hard to love someone that is treating you wrong. But respond with love. You don't respond back with hate. And
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that myself, because if you
Mm,
come to me with anger and hate, yeah, I'm pretty much gonna give you the same thing back.
sure.
So I'm not saying that I'm this great person and I practice what I preach. I try to, but it doesn't always come across that way. And it really doesn't matter what color you may be. For me, anyway, I don't care what color you are, because you could be black, and if you come to me at the wrong way, we gonna have a problem. Okay, so it's not about color, and that's what I really would like to convey to a lot of these fathers out here, that we need to teach our kids love and to acceptance, because that's how you're going to diminish racism. If we are teaching our kids from an early age not to hate,
Sure.
and to
Sure.
and get
That's right.
them, expose them to different races and different
Sure.
cultures, uh,
Sure.
you're going to have a better
Yeah.
generation of kids in the long run.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And sometimes teaching them and talking to them is one way, but I always say showing them. So
Yeah.
my son and I like to travel a lot. And we went to last year we went to Puerto Vallarta. And so when I like to travel, I also like to go to the other side of town. Not the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
not the
Not the
tourist pack.
tourist side.
Yeah, yeah. I like to take the bus and I like to eat the authentic foods. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of different things that are different from us. And I explained that to him. I said, look at social class. And I'm trying to teach him about understanding social class. Look at different cultures. He loves like learning about Spanish. He
Mm-hmm.
he, we're there for like a week and a half and he's understanding a language already that's different from us.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows how to, say hola and converse socially with different peoples there, there. And so I want him to see different things. I went to Africa a couple years ago and I went to you know Tanzania and Ethiopia and I did Kilimanjaro. I climbed Kilimanjaro and I
Mm-hmm.
told him some things about why I went there. A part of it is to heal, but also to a part of it is to see different things.
Mm-hmm.
I brought his old toys. I bought my, clothes that I didn't need and that I wasn't using. And I actually packed up a suitcase just to leave it there. And I tell him every time when he doesn't eat, he doesn't finish his food. I said, there are kids in Africa that would love to eat this and you're throwing it away.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to understand also too the value of food, the value of money, the value of time, the value of different cultures, the value of different things to try.
Yeah.
And so it's a very complex issue, especially when kids are coming from, two different single parents. And so you have two different learning styles, and it's very complex. It gets more complex as we get older and also as the world changes.
Yeah.
I think with the things going on now, it's good because conflict will result in definitely change. And so you need conflict in order to change.
Yeah.
And so, that's one thing why I think it's kind of good right now with how the world is viewing things, but we need that conflict in order to change.
Yeah.
And so that's acceptance of that happening.
Well, I read an article yesterday and it was talking about the police union. When you're talking about change, police
Sure.
union is now not going to protect the bad cops, as they say. And that's their words, not mine.
That's right.
But they're going to make it easier for other police officers to turn in or say something when they see one of their fellow cops doing something wrong or something that's against policy. And I think that's a huge step in regards to what has been going on, all the protesting and so forth. So if they really activate it and they really practice it, that is going to be huge for a lot of people because I know cops and I've known cops for years and I've had some good ones. I've had some bad ones, but it's just like you mentioned earlier in the conversation. You got good rich people, bad rich people. You got good poor people, bad poor people, and everything in between.
Uh,
So the same thing with police because they're all human and they all are going to make mistakes. Nobody is perfect,
sure.
but you got to be able to eliminate as many of the bad ones as we possibly can.
It's true. And now you have this culture where you protect each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the silent club. And now that's going to have to change.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to have to change because it's going to eventually affect them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they do bad stuff, they go to jail, and you're a part of that, then you go to jail.
Right, right.
And
Guilty by
it's just
association. Yeah,
it's it's it it's so it's disappointing sometimes. And I
yeah,
believe there is a functional perspective on police. We need it. We
yeah,
need them. We need them. And so when we need a group of people that's helping us, and then there's bad people within that group, it spoils the whole group.
yeah,
It spoils the whole group with identity and legal issues, and it's just
yeah,
I see Liz Cheney right now. She's getting beat up, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
she's you know she's creating change of what's happening. And so that's a kind of yeah, you need like pioneers like her in some way to create change. If there's a Republican, I used to be a Republican,
mm-hmm.
but I'm I'm no longer because of some things that are happening.
Yeah. Well, Roy, unfortunately, that's going to be our
Right.
time for the day. But before we go, what would you want to say to fathers out there that are raising interracial kids?
So, with fathers raising interracial kids, one is that understand the other culture. And if you can introduce that culture at your own home, that would be great. Because I think both sides, when you have two congruent messages, the same messages on both sides, then the kids are a lot more healthier that way. And that's the challenge. Is your other partner willing to do that?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Well, I agree with you, and thank you for those wise words. And I hope we have some of these fathers that are listening that may not be on the side of teaching their kids about different cultures will change and start teaching, because it's never too late. And like you said, we all got to lead by example. So
Yeah,
you should be out there learning about different cultures as well, whichever
that's
one you
right.
choose to learn. I like learning about all different cultures because I
Sure,
think there's something rich in everybody's culture, and
that's
I
right.
want a part of it. I want to know it. I want to enjoy it. Uh,
That's right.
and for me, it's food. You know, I love
I love
all type.
Portuguese food.
Oh, I love all, and I
I
love
do too.
some of everybody's food, and I
Yeah.
love trying everybody's food. So, that, and like for me,
Yeah.
when I tell my wife when we go traveling, oh, well, I want to go see this. I don't care about sightseeing, seeing a building or seeing a church, whatever. I want the food. Bring me the
All right.
food. And that's what I'm going for.
My come to Philly, and we're gonna have some. We're gonna go on a cheesesteak hunt.
Oh,
We're gonna
man.
we're gonna give you a couple of cheesesteak places, and I'll go down to New Orleans and have some beignets and po' boys and
Yep.
macoladas, and I love your
Yeah.
food down there. And
Yeah.
that's what it is. Seeing other things. Your way is not always the right way.
Right.
There's other ways to do things, and there's other ways to see things.
And you can
So,
learn from those different exposures. Yeah. All right. Well, Roy, thank you, man. I
all right,
appreciate it. And, we're going to continue to talk about this and going forward. I love the fact that Roy and I can sit down and talk, and we talk about different things. And this subject matter, like I said, is close to my heart because I do have interracial kids and I do have a blended family that is interracial. So, and I love them all to death. I, I can care less about your ethnicity. I really care about your heart. And if you're going to treat me right, I'm going to treat you right, and I'm going to love you just as well. But before we go, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the show and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever we drop a new show. And for those of you that are looking for additional help, go to thefathershowwithmikethompson.com, and we have resources there to help you to handle whatever you may be dealing with, and we are adding resources all the time. And if you're an organization or a company that has resources or provide a program that can help men, I would invite you to go to our website as well and click on resources, and there you can submit your information. Now here's the key: it's free for you to list your information, and men, it's free for you to go get that information, because the only thing we care about is making sure you get the help that you want when you need it. That's it. Okay? So we're not here to take your money. We're not here. And there's, by the way, there's no cookies. So we don't even know when you've been on the site. All I want you to do is go, say you want to get a hold of Roy. You go to the site, find Roy, call him, and y'all discuss whatever you're going to discuss. I'm not in it. All right. So thank you once again for being a part of our show. Thanks, Roy, for coming on the show and providing that information. So, ladies and gentlemen, until I see you next time, don't forget, tell somebody else and subscribe. And until then, have a blessed, wonderful week and stay safe.